Welcome to everybody. This is the Industry 4.0's Fireside Chat. Our purpose is to engage the power of diverse worldwide talent to accelerate the global evolution to Industry 4.0. We accomplish this by hosting and supporting respectful, thoughtful, and interdisciplinary open conversations and creating quality content on wide-ranging Industry 4.0 topics to expand the reach of our community. We're glad you decided to join us today for today's Fireside Chat with Julie Fraser. Julie is going to be sharing her experience with Industry 4.0 to drive real, sustainable business results. So my name is Mike Ungar, and I'm an Industry 4.0 Club co-founder. For the past 3 years, I've been a focal point business coach and executive coach. Prior to that, I spent 35 years at Michelin North America in a variety of continuous improvement, operations, finance, and HR roles. My co-host today is Mike Yost. Mike, would you please introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Mike, and welcome, Julie. My name is Mike Yost. I'm one of the co-founders, along with Mike, on the Industry 4.0 Club. I've been in the industrial automation, industrial software space for, just about 35 years myself. So really glad to hear what Julie has to say. I've known Julie for more than half of my career. She's absolutely one of my favorites. So I'm really, really excited to have her here on the show and hear what she has to say.
Oh, thanks, Mike. So let me take a moment and just give a bit more information about Julie, our guest. Julie is a passionate and committed thought leader, helping production companies develop and execute leading business strategies that drive improvement. She's a world-recognized authority on plant floor systems and how production plays into supply chain and product lifecycle issues. She describes her mission as, and I quote, to make production industries, their employees, and the ecosystem of partners more successful by helping buyers and sellers of technology communicate more effectively and make sound decisions. For the past 3 years, Julie's been the Vice President for Research on Manufacturing and Operations for Tech Clarity, Inc., whose mission is to educate the market to the business value of technology. Prior to Tech Clarity, Julie led her own companies. I think it's Iano Advisors, which was also focused on explaining manufacturing software in business terms and present source to bring experiential learning of mindfulness to the workplace. Julie, we're glad you've taken some time from your busy schedule to join us and share your insights today. As we get started, for those listening on LinkedIn Live, if you have questions for Julie, please share them in the comment section, and we're going to try to get to those and have her answer those during our time together. So I guess I have to start, Julie, because I know we're going to get into talking about tech and Industry 4.0, but I noticed on your profile on LinkedIn that you teach yoga and mindfulness. And I have to be honest with you, mindfulness is one of those terms that I hear a lot today, but I'm not sure if I fully understand what it means. Can you kind of enlighten me and our listeners? What does it mean to be mindful?
Sure. Thanks, guys, for having me. And mindfulness is one of my favorite topics. So, and actually, I think it's a core skill for our new environment of business, whether you call it Industry 4.0, which we do here, or whatever you call it. I think it's a personal transformation that enables a lot of other progress. And I think part of why people are so confused about mindfulness is that it's so very simple. It's not easy, but it's very, very simple. So mindfulness is truly being present in each moment, not wrapped up in thoughts about the past, beating yourself up for something you could have said or done differently that would have made a difference. Also, not focused on the future. And I think right now, not to say planning for the future is bad, but you want to actually stay present, because this moment is what creates the future. What you do, the decisions you make, the things you say, the person you are, is what creates your future. So a lot of times I find in these transformational times when companies are trying to undertake an Industry 4.0 initiative, there's a lot of fear about the future. People go into this spiral of, what if my skill set doesn't fit anymore? What if they don't respect me anymore? What if I don't matter anymore?
Yeah.
That's not mindfulness. That is being somewhere else in the present moment. If you can stay with what the company's trying to accomplish with their Industry 4.0 initiative, typically you can find a place that's going to benefit you personally in your job, in your role. So I think it's actually relevant. So a lot of people think about mindfulness in terms of a practice, and there is a practice. It's very, very simply to see how your mind works.
Uh-huh.
Watch it as it rolls, and then keep coming back, because your mind will take you somewhere else, and then to bring it back and say, oh yeah, right now, right here, I'm just sitting here.
That's good.
And so one of my favorite examples is actually Viktor Frankl. If you know him, he wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning, and he survived a Nazi camp. And how he did that was noticing that there is a little space in between a stimulus, what's happening in the external world, and his personal response. In that little space, you have a choice of how you react. That is how he survived that situation, which most people lost their souls.
Well, yeah, it's a great comment. In other words, and if I can step out from what you've said in macro, oftentimes we'll say you can't control the environment, but you can control what you do about it. And so you bring up a great point there.
Yep. And so mindfulness is sort of the core. It's sort of I think it's an unfortunate term. It's translated term from some Buddhist or Sanskrit. I don't even know where it comes from, but because to some degree, it's really not getting caught up in those threads of your mind, but being right here, right now, what's true, because we tend to make up stories and they don't usually benefit us.
Good point. Thank you. Go ahead, Mike.
No, that's fine. I was just agreeing with Julie.
Great. So Julie, if we kind of go to, I want to talk a little bit about your career for a moment. You've done a lot of things in and around production Industry 4.0. Would you kind of highlight some of the things that you've done in the past that have kind of prepared you for your current role at Tech Clarity?
Sure. So I guess the first thing to say is, here at Tech Clarity, I'm doing research to understand what value companies are really getting and what they understand. Mm-hmm. So leading up to this, I've had other industry analyst roles for a big chunk of my career. As you mentioned, I had my own company called I&O Advisors previously. I worked for a company in the UK called Cambashi. Had a partner with a company called Industry Direct. So a lot of sort of industry analysts, where you stand back, you take a big picture view. A lot of people talk about industry analysts as experts, and honestly, I think it's a misnomer. Personally, I think we industry analysts are sort of the witness. We're the observers. Mm-hmm. We can take this big picture, we get a lot of information, and then we try and sort of fit it together and make some sense of it. But we're not the experts. The people who are doing the work are the experts. They're the deep, deep experts. So anyway, that's just one of my little pet things. But so industry analyst roles. But then I was in marketing and strategy for a software company. Mm-hmm. And so, working with those, being inside a software company helped me get a different perspective on that. And then earlier in my career, I actually wrote a newsletter. This is dating me, called Sim Strategies, Computer Integrated Manufacturing. Remember that back in the 80s? Yep. So to write that monthly newsletter, I visited about 4 plants a month to be able to get one case study I could publish in every issue every month. So I have seen a lot. Early in my career, I saw all kinds of different manufacturing plants and what they were doing and how they were starting to use technology. Mm-hmm. And so I've seen that evolution from the early days. And actually, even before then, my summer job when I was in college, I was an assembler at an industrial equipment plant.
Yeah.
We made to order stuff. And so every week was something, we were building something different.
I guess, I guess that's what you call learning from the ground floor.
Yes. And I was amazed because I didn't really realize how many super intelligent people worked on the plant floor, right? My dad worked in an office. He was brilliant, but I just didn't know that the people on the plant floor, there were just as many brilliant people there and committed and, dedicated. I was really, really taken with that environment, frankly.
Yeah. Thank you. Good.
So one other thing I'd like to add to Julie's resume, she and I have worked together a number of years, and I think, as you read in her bio, Mike, her focus on business results and how technology drives that. And so we've been parts of projects for years of how to capture that and make sure people are looking at it that way. But Julie, you also lead the community groups at another nonprofit, Mesa International. So maybe just talk a little bit about what you're trying to do, because I think it mirrors so nicely what we're working to accomplish at the Industry 4.0 Club.
Yes, I agree. I think it's very complementary. So Mesa, the Manufacturing Enterprise Solutions Association, is an international not-for-profit association. And we were doing a lot of work in what that group calls smart manufacturing, Industry 4.0, whatever, it's kind of the same stuff. But we started to recognize that we had sort of a small group of people working on things, and we wanted to open up and get a bigger voice coming in, sort of a voice of the customer exercise. And we also felt like people needed a place to just come and share their experiences. And so several years ago, a few of us set up this community. So it's a smart manufacturing community, and we have 4 different topics that we rotate through. We meet every couple of weeks, and it's an online forum like this. We do also have a LinkedIn group, but we can, if anybody's interested, let me know, and we can definitely share that with you. But our objective is really just to have an open discussion forum. We do tend to set topics just to start the conversation going, but we ask people to bring anything that's of interest to them to those meetings. And we get a lot of really interesting conversations, some great examples of people who have succeeded, and some interesting examples where things haven't gone so well too. So it's been really fun.
That's an example too, I think, again, aligning with our mission here at the club, where Mesa is a membership organization, but these community groups don't require a membership, right?
That's correct.
Trying to pull more people into the conversation as well.
Yeah, that's correct. And we've got a wonderful cross-section of very active participants in our community. And I just want to thank everybody who's been a part of that, because, there's no community unless people come and talk.
And maybe one of the things I would add, Mike, not to steal all the talk, and I'll throw it back to you here, but I think it's really hard to overstate the importance of Julie's perspective in even guiding those types of conversations, right? So the groups that were set up, the need for the group, the agenda, working around the barrier of membership models, and the focus on business value. Like, let's start with the problem you're trying to solve. That permeates everything that these groups are doing, and it's largely driven by the influence that Julie has and people like her. And so I think that's an experience experience that she has, and something I think we really want to drill into here through the rest of our conversation as well.
Great.
Well, thank you for that. So one of the questions that we started getting into, following what Mike was saying there, and you mentioned this community you're part of. I'm guessing inside the community there are manufacturers and vendors alike. Is that fair? Are they both?
Yes, we have manufacturers, we have software and hardware providers, we have services, a lot of really strong services providers, which they're always interesting because they can often talk about things that they've seen without getting in trouble.
Yeah, that's
right?
good.
Like some of the manufacturers struggle to feel comfortable, even though we keep telling them, it's fine. But we do record just like you do. So,
and that's a great.
So yeah, we have some academics, we have some researchers, we have a really great cross section of folks.
Well, and that's a good segue into kind of what I was curious about, because we do talk also to manufacturers and vendors, and I guess I'm curious to get your perspective. What do manufacturers need to know about vendors, so that when they go to implement something related to Industry 4.0, that they get the results they're looking for?
Yeah, there's lots of questions to ask. I'm not sure we can cover it all in the amount of time we have, but in short, I think one of the ways that I like to start in understanding a solution provider's come from is really where are you coming from? How did this come about? Why are you offering this? because there's every company has sort of an origin story, no matter how big they are, no matter how complex they are. And the approach they've taken to growing their company, starting their company, helps actually understand whether there's a good fit. So sometimes, you find a really interesting product, but it comes out of a completely different kind of industry. In fact, right now, there are a lot of people in our industry who don't have any manufacturing or production background. They're technology geniuses. Now, it doesn't mean that their product won't fit, but if you can't hear in their conversation some of the challenges that you face, then, you need to be really thinking about, okay, is my team up to the challenge of making it fit using this cool technology? So that's part of it. The other thing I think is really important for companies to consider is this is when you're choosing a solution provider to work with. I actually don't like the term vendor, because to me, I buy food on the street from a vendor, right? If I'm buying a hot dog, that's a vendor. It's a transaction. This should not be a transaction. You want a partner who will be there with you over the long haul, who will support you, who cares about your success, and has some mechanisms to track your success and actually feed it. So, that's one of the things that I think, has been a challenge often. And there's one other thing I want to say. I feel like even more than understanding the vendors, what I see trips up manufacturers in their Industry 4.0 programs is that they don't always understand themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They get carried away with this vision, this amazing vision, but you got to really understand, who is your company? Where do you stand on various levels of maturity for the kind of project you're thinking about undertaking? And what's the cultural need and tolerance, right? Because some company cultures, they can tolerate a huge amount of change pretty quickly, but others, more traditional, mindsets, it's got to be sort of an incremental step change. So you get to the vision, you still have to have the vision, but you got to get there inch by inch. So there's a lot.
So if I'm a solution provider, following what you're saying, and I come across a company, so I'll drop the word vendor. Thank you for that. If I'm a solution provider, and I come across a manufacturer who is looking for my support, but I discover that they're that manufacturer you just described, that they're not fully sure about who they are. Do I still sell to them, or do I walk away? Do I still help them, or do I walk away, or how do I help them?
I think that's a great question, and I think it depends a little bit on who you are and what your offering is. Mm-hmm. So if you have capabilities to do something like some consulting work with them, whether it's through your company or through a partner in your ecosystem, if you have that consulting capability to work with them and do a workshop to help them come to an understanding of, here's where you are, here's where your opportunities are, here's where you might, move forward. That's always, I think, a great starting point to really be able to, set some realistic understanding of, where are we starting? What is the as is truly? Now, not every company has that capability. Mm-hmm. If you don't have that capability and you don't have a partner with that capability, then I suggest you go get a partner, frankly, because you're limiting your ability to succeed. Mm-hmm. And every time, as a solution provider, every time there's a failure with your product set or your offering, it just is such a challenge to get past it. So I just feel like you need to have, that's part of the ecosystem concept to me, mm-hmm. is that you need to realize what your company is good at and what it's not good at.
Well, one of the things, Mike and I talk about this a lot, and Julie, we've lived this for a long time, but to sort of articulate it for the audience, or maybe explore here for a minute, what you're talking about crosses a couple different dimensions. So Mike asked about, a potential project. Well, that's at the implementation phase, right? But ahead of the implementation phase, there's an education phase, and ahead of the education phase, there's a general awareness, right? And so we're driving general awareness here, right? And then people look for ways to get educated, and they're learning things. Maybe they're learning about addressing the issues you talked about from a company perspective, a culture perspective, how to truly define this in broader terms than just the technology. Or maybe they're going to a vendor and they're just getting the, here's a project, here's a problem, the analogy of having a hammer and everything looks like a nail, right? So I think this market dynamic, maybe get your thoughts on this market dynamic that we have, this education component, whether you're selling a product or you're just trying to promote the industry as we are doing here, I think is a real challenge for people to face. So maybe your thoughts on sort of that continuum from awareness to education to implementation.
Yeah, it's a journey, and part of the challenge, I think, too, is that this concept of Industry 4.0 is very broad. It touches every aspect of your business, right? Mm-hmm. People think of it as, different things depending on their role. And they're right to do so because that's the part that's probably going to touch them. But there needs to be some executive commitment behind it. And then, as you say, the awareness stage, we've been talking about Industry 4.0 for quite a while now. I think the term first came out, 15 years ago?
Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah.
So, we've been talking about it a long time. And so the awareness, but it's still getting above your day-to-day, especially right now with the skills shortage, getting above that day-to-day, cranking out whatever we're making is very difficult. So I'm not trying to be at all negative. I feel like we're actually making really good progress in awareness. A lot of people recognize that they want to do some kind of Industry 4.0 transformation. But I think getting to the next stage is a challenge, especially if you're not a company that understands yourself well, or you don't have a good sort of consulting partner.
Well, and how about on on the solution provider side as well, right? Like, so what can the solution provider community do to make sure that they're, I guess, creating the right ecosystems, engaging people the right way, putting the shared business outcomes of the manufacturer they're dealing with ahead of, the immediate sale, things like that. What do you think the vendors do? The vendors get it, right? I'm sorry, not vendors. Do the solution providers get it?
Well, some do and some don't, like with any other question, right? I don't want to generalize because I think I have seen some companies, some solution provider companies create a really important high-level role of sort of chief customer satisfaction officer or something along that line. Now, those are the companies that get it. They are trying to really take a big picture view and say, okay, in the scope of what we provide, how good a job are we doing, and what else can we do, could we do, how do we build our ecosystem, whatever the issues might be, they're hearing it from the customer side. So having that outside in perspective, I think, is a really crucial step that companies need to take. And I think part of the thing that manufacturers are talking about doing integrated business planning, where you sort of have finance and sales and marketing and operations and supply chain and product portfolio people all in the same room. Well, I think the solution providers need to do the same thing, because most of those companies are led by one group or another. Some of them are driven by development, a lot of them, and they're building these phenomenal products, but they couldn't market their way out of a paper bag. And then there's other ones that are driven by sales, right? The number, hitting the number. And they're doing things that aren't necessarily good for the customer as a result. So, you really need to find the balance, bring all the parties together and have it, create for yourself sort of what is the ethic of our company that is going to help our customers succeed, as opposed to, necessarily what is the ethic that's going to make our company really huge.
Right. Or get to the next development or the next funding round or exit or things like that, right?
Right. Not to say those things are bad. I mean,
Right.
but there's a way to get there through the customer success, as opposed
Yes.
to looking at it, not paying attention to that.
Well, and in fact, we quite often we know that it's a lot easier to keep a client than to get a new one. So when you go down that road and you really form that relationship with your client, you end up most likely either getting a great referral or getting future business from them, and that's a lot easier than starting from scratch with somebody, without question.
Yeah, it absolutely is. It's better for your business. It's better for your customer's business. But it does take a different mindset than what a lot of companies have had historically.
And speaking of that mindset, so one of our co-founders here at the Industry 4.0 Club is from a solution provider. He's the CEO of a solution provider company, and he talks about the fact that he sells to manufacturers who, for his analogy, are trying to bake chocolate chip cookies, and he sells chocolate chips. So there are a whole bunch of other things that the manufacturers need to know about, different ingredients they have to have. You talked about the different, parts of the organization working together. And so he knows that he has to be the best chocolate chip salesperson that he can be, but that it has to be part of a bigger story as well. So I think that's a great analogy, and wonder what your thoughts are with that kind of a mindset.
Well, I love that analogy. And that's really why I wanted this conversation to be about an ecosystem, right? Because there is no way for any single solution provider to provide you everything that you need to become effective as a manufacturer. And so to me, that's sort of, as a manufacturer, you're looking at this huge pantheon of possibilities. So it needs to be an ecosystem that where everybody can thrive. It needs to be win-win all around. Like if you think about a terrarium, right? When you were a kid, right? Everybody had or made a terrarium in school. So there's a turtle and there's some plants and maybe there's a snake in there, all these different things. And of course, then you got to put the bugs in, right? To keep everything going. So all the different things all need to be able to have their place, play their role. And if you're a bug, you got to realize you're going to get eaten. That happens, right? Not everybody's role in an ecosystem is feels great, but really there are a lot of players in the ecosystem, and the manufacturers have to be prepared to put together for themselves an ecosystem. But again, that comes to that self-understanding too.
Well,
right? They got to know in their terrarium, am I the turtle? Am I the snake? Am I the bug? Am I one of the plants?
In fact, you bring a great point up, because one of the things that comes to my mind today is the technology is moving so quickly. It's very difficult for any especially small to mid-sized manufacturers to be up to date on what's going on in the marketplace. So having an ecosystem, having partners that are out there that you can rely upon to help educate you and keep you abreast of those changes, who are maybe experts in fields that you can't afford to have in-house, makes a lot of sense, huh?
Oh yeah, I think it's crucial. And I, here in this country, we have the MEPs and folks like that too. There are some, government funded organizations that can support the smaller and mid-sized guys. So I think, and I don't know that everybody knows about those services that are available.
Right. Just to we can definitely go into the services and the MEPs and such, but just to sort of stick for 1 second on the solution provider side and this topic of Industry 4.0, and to bring back your experience in a computer integrated manufacturing environment a few years ago. The technology, people talk about, we've been doing this a long time, right? We've been doing the concepts for a long time, right? We've been trying to get the same business outcomes for a long time, but really Industry 4.0 with these new technologies, the industrial Internet of Things and cloud connectivity and such, these are really starting to be enablers to where we can make these things happen. So I really like your analogy of the, not to make anybody a bug, but I think it's easier today with the technology capabilities to say, here's the role that I play, right? And I'm not going to try to come in and I'm going to be the monolithic owner of everything in the plant. That's historically, from our practice, Julie, the old MES days, right? you land and expand, right? You get in and you bring some value, and then you start to build out more and more and more and more capabilities to where you end up being this big chunk of infrastructure that today you really don't need that way, right? Solve a problem and get your sensors, get your technology, stitch it together, things like that.
Yeah, well, I think you're making a good point. I think the solution provide. I think there's still a space for the land and expand model. There still are some types of solutions that can easily expand and expand and expand.
Right.
But even those, as you say, there are still pieces that those companies aren't going to do, and they need to learn to play nice. They need to be open. They need to have there's so many easy ways to connect systems together these days and create structures and even ontologies for your data. But, I think all those new technologies are going to make a huge difference in terms of long-term success for the projects too, whether it's composable architectures or low code and no code, or actually being able to take whatever your solution is and then tailor it even more deeply than historically with the modules. I think that's a component of it. But I think you're right to say you can't expect to do everything. It doesn't matter how big a land and expand capability you have.
Right.
You won't be the only. And even if you were, for one plant, let's be honest, companies buy and sell plants all the time and divisions, and you're never going to be the whole thing for anybody.
Right.
I'd like to there's a comment that was made that I want to put up on the screen, and maybe we can take that and talk more about this question of strategy a little bit. So Harold writes, he's been through this challenge with dozens of manufacturers who are adding sensors to their devices, building out some solutions, and then they get to a point of now what do we do? So, how do companies help really develop a longer term strategy beyond what he's alluding to, this like let's capture data?
Yeah, that's such a common challenge. I actually wrote a paper on that a while ago because it's such a huge challenge. How do you stand back and set a strategy? Really make sure you've got a strategy behind what you're doing, so that all of the investments and projects sort of have a clear next step. And the strategy is not an Industry 4.0 strategy. It is a business strategy. Industry 4.0 is part of how you achieve that business strategy. And that's where I think people also get sort of confused sometimes. They think about the technology and they create this technology vision, but it has to be the business vision that the technology then supports. So, if you're a company that is trying to make more money off of services, or maybe even offer your product as a service as opposed to selling the product, that's a different path than a company who's cranking out a bunch of widgets, right? So there's a different need that you have in your Industry 4.0 strategy because it's a different business strategy, right? So that, I think, is the foundation for all successful projects, is to really have a big picture. And of course, one of the things is that requires some executive participation in that, right? The business strategy is something the executive set, and then you got to have a way to parse it into, okay, so from a technology standpoint, what are we going to do to support that strategy? Mm-hmm. And for each project, you need to be tying that into the business strategy, the goals and the metrics that you have, right? If you're the widget guy, you're trying to get more efficiency, you're trying to create as many as you can, maybe expand into more markets. Whereas if you're the other guy that's trying to create a service from your product, you're trying to really up the quality, because otherwise your maintenance service is going to cost you more than they're paying, right? So there's different focus points. Really essential for people to be able to set everything in that context of what am I trying to accomplish as a business? And then it's much clearer. So once you probably put the sensors in order to collect certain data to create, mm-hmm. right, the benefit in one area.
Yeah, hopefully hopefully you had a strategy when you even started with the sensors, right? Of what you
Exactly.
wanted. So,
Yeah. That should be the backdrop to these projects. And that then, again, you can sort of create threads from each of the business objectives back into, okay, a project looks like this to give us this particular result.
That's great. No, thanks for sharing that perspective on that. I think, this question of having a good strategy and really helping businesses get that created. I know there are a lot of times we've seen where there's gaps in companies' ability they know how to do a strategy, but they don't know how to bring this Industry 4.0 part into that strategy. So, getting some help with that makes a lot of sense, and really sort of insisting that you do it, even if it's a crawl before you run with it. So.
Right. And I know, again, there are a lot of great solution providers out there who can do that kind of work for you, with you, I should say. And I can also say there are even some, technology providers, hardware and software providers, who have an upfront, I would call it sort of a opportunity assessment part of how they do their business. And to me, that is just smart. To be able to go in and help upfront your potential customers figure out where's the low-hanging fruit and how does that fit into making your business more successful. If you have a team of people who can do that, again, internal or external, doesn't matter. That's what's going to drive long-term success, both for the manufacturers, but also for the solution providers who provide that service, because then they become a trusted partner. Right? If you've gone in and said, well, this is your low-hanging fruit, and I anticipate you can get X amount of benefit from it, they implement the solution that you guys put together as an ecosystem. If they get that benefit, they're going to go, hey, these guys knew what they were talking about.
Yeah.
So maybe, Julie, part of the process there for manufacturer that Harold brought up about starting, good thing that they're starting and doing stuff. But one of the challenges is the knowing where to start or how to interpret what they're hearing and things like that. Maybe talk for a second about the kind of research that your firm does and the deliverables, because you guys take spaces and problem sets and areas that are being defined in industry, and then actually go do research with the manufacturing base about types of returns people are seeing or value or problem areas or things like that. So maybe talk about that, because it could be resources that people would like to get access to help them just, I guess, start on their education side of things.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, that is what we do. So we do primary research both by surveys, which anybody out there who's willing to take surveys once in a while, take 10 or 15 minutes out of your day. It makes such a big difference in this process, which we've been talking about through this whole conversation of education, right? It's what this Industry 4.0 Club is about, and what our company is also about, is educating the market. But we also do some with interview-based. So, we'll talk to manufacturers and understand, get some anecdotes, and sometimes we combine those things together. So yeah, we write white papers and ebooks and survey and buyer's guides. Some of those buyer's guides, that's a useful thought process too, because we give you all the different things to think about if you're looking at a particular category or trying to solve a particular problem. So yeah, we do. That is a big part of our mission, is to help companies understand what's out there and what's available. So thanks for giving us a plug, Mike.
Well, no, I mean, it's a great resource, right? And even driving, clarity around technology, the name of the firm, right? Tech Clarity. Yep. Is that, do they go to your website to?
Yes, they go to the website, and you can just search on topics. You can search on types of, so, some people only want to watch a video. Some people, we have videos, we have podcasts, we have lots and lots of papers and ebooks and so forth as well. So yeah, you go to the website and search, and hopefully you find what you want. And if you don't, feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to do the research on the things people care about.
So I'm going to turn us to the future. I know we should be in the present, so we talked about that earlier, but I want to just ask you a question about what you see today. Maybe that's back to the present. what's an industry trend that manufacturers and vendors alike need to pay attention to and even invest in sooner than later that you're seeing today?
So some of our latest research we've been doing an executive strategies research project for the past, we're just opening up for survey response for the 5th year. Last year, for the first time, it showed that these executives are moving beyond talking about environmental sustainability to actually taking action and making investments. And of course, I think all of us have seen there is some research out there that shows that the companies that do a great job with their environmental sustainability programs are actually more profitable. In many cases, depending on what kind of an industry you're in, they might have a better brand reputation as well. So there are lots of good reasons to do it. It's been a little fuzzy, but I think, again, our Industry 4.0 technologies are a huge enabler to be able to pinpoint our opportunities and do something meaningful to help save the planet. I mean, it's really, our manufacturing industries have a huge role that we can play there. And increasingly, I think that's starting to get off the blocks. So that's a trend that I think all of us in manufacturing need to pay attention to. And we use a lot of energy, we use a lot of materials. And we've always been focused on maybe wasting fewer of them, but there's some huge innovation turning everything on its head. What about circularity, right? What if we could have no waste coming out of our factory? Everything that comes out the other end gets reused somehow. Really cool. There's just some opportunities that, again, I think our Industry 4.0 technologies are the foundational enablers for that action that we're starting to see.
I'm glad you said it. As you talked about that, I was thinking the circular economy. As you just described, the more, if you think about it, going from talking about it to action with respect to the environment, it's really the first step to getting to that circular economy, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, I feel like, we talk about transformation, and that is part of the overall transformation of industry, is to go from being the sort of the bad boy polluters to the innovators who are coming up with new ways to make better products and not be the bad boys, actually not be killing everything off in the process. So, even some of the companies that historically, were pointed at as the worst of the worst are starting to come around. So I'm really excited. I feel like we have a new era coming on that will not only be better for the planet, but I think be better for our industry, because our industry has a bad reputation in a lot of circles. And I think
Yes.
I think we're starting to turn it around. So I'm really excited about it. It's going to help attract new people, which we desperately need.
Yeah, and that's a good segue into a question that came in early in our conversation that I wanted to get to before we got finished here, and that was it came in here, and I don't want to try to pronounce your first name, but I'll just say Ark for lack of a better way to do that. He asked, "What does the future hold?" And I think he's talking about for new grads who are joining industry today.
Wow. It's a great question. I think, again, I feel as if the new generation coming into our workforce has the possibility of transforming the industry to be more sustainable, to be more fun, frankly, right? Because you have that gaming background. We didn't grow up as gamers. That didn't exist when I was a little kid. But you grew up with that. You kind of expect some things to be fun. And I think they can be. These technologies are based on the same technologies as the games. So we can make it more fun. We can make it more engaging. And I think we can make it far more sustainable. And I think the young people are also, when I think about it, I think they have the capability to bring those fresh perspectives. I feel like some of the things that have kept us from succeeding in some of our Industry 4.0 projects are outdated mindsets. young people, I think, can bring new mindsets. So I think the future is really bright for manufacturing. And, all the people that talk about, oh, yeah, well, it's going to become all cottage economy and stuff like that. No, I think you young people are going to be able to revitalize a whole range of industrial companies. And I'm really, really excited to see that happening. So thanks for asking. And I think the future is bright, but it also relies on you being willing to step up to the bat and maybe to challenge in a respectful way. You don't want to be calling the baby ugly, but at the same time, you want to be sure that you're creating a really beautiful new generation of manufacturing companies. And I think there's a way to do that says, if you can see all the good things that your company's doing as you enter the workforce and build on those, that's going to be your path to success. And our path to success is a set of industries and as a planet and economy, right? This is what drives the economy. So those young people coming in, first of all, I'm really grateful that you're coming in because there's a lot of strikes against our industry right now. It feels like it does have a bad reputation. So I think you've got a lot to offer us. And I think that you can find the good that the industries can offer you as well.
That's great.
Yeah.
I think we're reaching close to the end of our time together. So, Mike, do you have a final question or thought that you wanted to pose to Julie or share?
I just take exception to Julie's point that we're not gamers. Just because we're in pinball arcades and things like that doesn't mean that we were not gaming. So, no, other than that, I mean, I really just sort of want to circle back to a point that Julie made at the beginning about the mindfulness, about being present, and the analogy of tying that to this journey, right? Like if you're committed to the business results, right? And then everything that you're doing in the moment is toward that. If you have to recast something or do it over or pick a different technology set, that's fine. You're still headed where you need to be headed. And I think that's a great analogy. I also think it's a great perspective on how to look at things, because personally, I'm always in a rush to get somewhere. And I think it's a great perspective to look through and say, can't do tomorrow's work today, so we'll get this stuff done and keep the path. But that's all
yeah, thanks, Mike. And I'll just add, Julie, your point about mindfulness as well. Today, being able to retain your workforce is an important element. The workforce is we say there's a shortage of workers, and so you want to retain those folks that you have today. And when you're sitting down and really talking with someone and working with them, being in the moment with them, being mindful with them, is huge. The fastest way to lose somebody is really to not be mindful, to not be with them at the moment, because that's such an important leadership quality, I think. So I just want to reinforce that as well. If you want to retain your workforce, be in the moment with them. They will appreciate it. That's such a big deal. So I wanted to then pass it to you, Julie. What are some final thoughts you've got for our audience today before we finish up?
Well, I guess I want to just sort of come back to our original theme about building an ecosystem. And I really, really encourage everyone, because so many folks in our industry have sort of a mathematical or an engineering or, sort of a hard science background. And that's phenomenal. But what I need you to think about too is how about the biological, like the ecosystem aspect? Truly, in an ecosystem, all the right organisms come together to thrive together. It's a win-win situation all around. And that to me is where we're headed as an industry. I think historically there have been a lot of companies that have been managed as numbers on a spreadsheet. And I think those days are over. You cannot succeed doing that anymore. As you said, Mike, we have this skills shortage, and you've got to really, people are people. We have our emotional states. We have all of the complexities of human beings are always going to be what drives our companies. So all this new technology needs to be surrounding a really caring core, right? You need to value your people. As you say, you need to be present with them. So I think that's sort of a great ending point, honestly, that you brought up. How can I make sure that all of the people and all of the elements of my business can thrive in the ecosystem I've built? Right?
Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks, Julie.
No, thank you for that. So as we wrap up today, I want to thank Mike and Julie for joining us for this really great conversation. I hope everybody that's been listening has gotten something from it as well. I want to thank everybody who's joined us in the audience and for the questions that you've shared that we could ask Julie as well. If you like conversations like this, please look for them on LinkedIn Live or LinkedIn Audio through our Industry 4.0 club or group page. We host conversations like this on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, alternating topics around themes related to women in manufacturing, the future of manufacturing, fireside chat like this conversation was today, and people, process, and culture. Please also join us on our LinkedIn page or visit our website at industry40club.com. And for everybody, I wish everybody a great rest of the day and rest of the week. And again, thanks, Julie. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Mike. Bye, everybody. Thanks for being here.